Thanks for joining us tonight on NTTV News. Now, we are live in the square for a special edition of NTTV Nightly News. I'm Daniela Ibarra.
And I'm Brendan Rualcaba. Tonight we'll be looking at the history of Denton from an unusual perspective, and we'll update you on the rebuilding on the square here from the fire last spring.
But first, let's head back to the studio to our Victoria Lara with our top story. Victoria?
Daniela and Brandon, tonight Denton County public health officials are still assisting in the investigation of the death of a 23-year-old man. His body was discovered yesterday. Police were called to the 3600 block of Camino Real Trail in South Denton. About 9:30 yesterday morning, they found the body of Nyak Lee. He was dead but had no apparent wounds. It now appears he may have died from some pre-existing medical condition. Jennifer Rainey is the county public information officer.
Not sure at this time. We don't believe it's a public health threat. It looks like he may have had pre-existing conditions or medical conditions outside of what happened yesterday. We don't know anything on the criminal investigation or the death scene investigation. The Tarrant County Medical Examiners handles all of that.
Denton County is working with the Tarrant County Medical Examiner's Office reviewing the man's previous medical records. Although this is still an ongoing investigation, officials say there is no evidence of any public health threat. Danny and Brandon, back to you.
Now we'll have more from Victoria later in the newscast, but first let's talk about where we are and why we're here.
Well, Denton is one of the fastest growing communities in the state, and of course is home to UNT. The Denton Square is a dynamic part of the city and is dominated by the courthouse.
NTTV's Julian Esparza has more on the historic building.
At the center of the Denton Square,
it's definitely kind of, an iconic structure,
is the Denton County Courthouse.
I think it's just kind of a marvel. I think people love seeing the building.
The courthouse has been around for a while, 122 years to be exact, but it's what you'll find in the building that's much older.
This is a really great example of all of the fossils that make up limestone. A lot of these are shells that are millions and millions of years old.
And if you take a stroll on the lawn outside the courthouse, you'll find a gravesite to the namesake of the city of Denton and Denton County, John B. Denton.
He was a preacher and a militiaman and a lawyer. He was a jack of all trades, really.
And if you need the time, look up.
Back in 1896, someone would have had to come up here and wind the clock manually. Thankfully, technology is here today, and it has all been motorized.
The courthouse is also home to a museum, which is currently closed due to smoke damage sustained from the downtown mini mall fire.
We have thousands of artifacts that we've collected from people who have lived in Denton County. Anything from, textiles like dresses to, household objects.
Another feature the courthouse has? Ghosts. Well, at least one former employee thinks so.
We used to have a security guard who was convinced that he would see like orbs on the cameras that we have in the hallways. But he was always convinced they were friendly dancing ghosts.
Whether or not the ghosts are real, the spirit and tradition of the courthouse is. For NTTV News, I'm Julian Esparza.
I hope those ghosts are real because I think I'm going to head in there and try to go ghost hunting myself.
Okay, Danny. Let's get our feedback on the ground and head back to NTTV studios to Lexi Trinidad, who has our first look at the weather. Lexi?
Thanks, Alexis. Now, right now, we're at the top of LSA, which a lot of people actually don't know. It stands for Lone Star Attitude. The restaurant opened in Denton 5 years ago, right here on the square. And according to their website, LSA is the first gourmet burger joint here in Texas to honor the state's musical legends and trailblazers. There's not only tons of Texas decor, but all the items on the menu are named after Texas music legends and trailblazers.
The Denton area has a lot of local talent, but there wasn't always an outlet to get musicians out into the world. That's what inspired Jake Laughlin to create Denton Radio. Denton Radio, also a part of Discovery Denton, has been running and continuously growing since 2016.
Primarily, DentonRadio.com is an online radio station trying to promote local Denton music and entertainment. It wasn't until I was graduating college that I even realized there was all this great music here. And I thought, man, the talent level is insane. How is it that I didn't know about this?
The online radio station was created in hopes of bringing light to local talent.
And by creating something that could lift that up, I felt like, man, we could do something to help a whole lot of people, not just get music out there, but try and let a lot of people in this community know, hey, we're listening, we love what you're doing, please keep creating what you're doing.
Denton Radio continues to grow by using different media outlets.
Sort of diversified to a lot of stuff over the last few years. We have the radio, but we also do a ton of video content, live content on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. We've got a lot of podcasting out there now, Spotify, iHeartRadio, iTunes, all that good stuff. So wherever somebody likes to consume content online, we're trying to get there.
Jake then left us with one final message.
It's just thank you very much for listening. It's been an amazing ride that we never expected to get the reception that we have.
If you want to tune in and hear, head over to DentonRadio.com.
Residents are still recovering from a fire that chipped away at the hearts of the Denton community. NTTV's Victoria Lara has more in the studio.
Thanks, Danny. The lives of many Denton residents changed last December when a fire devastated a handful of small businesses downtown. Today, a muraled fence divides the square from the rubble that once was the downtown mini-mall. Neighboring shops who suffered from severe smoke and water damage are under complete interior remodeling. One of those businesses is Jupiter House Coffee. In a phone interview, I got to talk with co-owner Joey Hawkins about how he thinks the people of Denton are taking the loss of the historic mini-mall. And he said, there are places in Denton that people consider almost their third home. And I think to a lot of people, it's like losing just that. Now, although we still don't know when the mini-mall will reopen, Jupiter House Coffee is set for a grand reopening in January. Danny and Brandon, back to you out on the square.
Thanks, Victoria. And coming up, Beto and Cruz go head-to-head for a second time.
And another weekend of rain. We'll have an update later on in the show.
As you can see, this graph pursued by the National.
I was 0.5 credits away from completing high school, and I didn't do it. My support team never stopped pushing for me to be better because they knew who I could become as a person. I've been given an opportunity, and I'm just thankful for it.
Democratic challenger Beto O'Rourke and incumbent Ted Cruz will face off in a new debate that is expected to cover domestic and foreign policy issues. It was originally scheduled for last Saturday, but a vote on Brett Kavanaugh's nomination canceled it. Now the Texas Senate race is one of the top contested races in the country, leaving the state in uncertainty. The debate will be October 16th in San Antonio.
And if the upcoming debate wasn't enough for you, Autumn Masters is in the studio with more on a possible blue wave sweeping the nation. Autumn?
Thanks, Brandon. And as Election Day approaches, Democrats across the U.S. are hoping to ride a blue wave, one that could push them all the way to the top of the House. With this in mind, could Texas contribute to the force of the wave?
Democrats are optimistic about a potential blue wave election, one that could help them gain control over the House of Representatives. Democrats have not had an upper hand in the House since 2010.
Making sure we win back the House. We have to win. Not a joke. Not a joke.
Democrats, as of now, have 195 seats in the House. Republicans have 238 seats. In order for Democrats to win control over the GOP, they need to keep their 195 seats and win 23 more seats. This brings a challenge to the Democratic table because 12 of the Democratic incumbents are districts that Trump won in 2016. One race that's not losing momentum anytime soon is the Texas Senate race. Although Texas is predominantly a red state, could Texans expect a change in party this election? Democratic Texas Senate nominee Beto O'Rourke says although he's hopeful for a Democratic win, he hopes there's at least a balance in power result over the Senate after this midterm election.
This is not going to be a blue wave. This is not about changing the partisan color of this state. It's making sure that every single one of us, Republican, Independent, and Democrat, is represented in the United States Senate. And we're represented towards those things that we want to achieve, not against anyone else, not against another political party.
UNT political science professor Matthew Eshba-Soha says a blue wave can mean big things for the House of Representatives and U.S. politics as a whole, even if there is not a blue wave election.
Not an overwhelming blue wave. I think if there's progress made, if Democrats are able to increase voter turnout, if they're able to gain some seats in the House of Representatives and some seats in the Senate, you're going to want to spin that as a positive, as momentum into 2020. The outcome of the midterm elections will affect likely candidates for the Democratic nomination for the presidency in 2020. We typically wait until we're elections obsessed in the United States, so we're really not going to talk realistically about 2020 until we get past 2018, the next election, but come January, February, March of next year, we'll get those candidates, and depending on what happens in the midterms, I think we'll speak to what sorts of candidates think they have a real chance.
With only 23 seats needed to win and Election Day only a little over a month away, I'll be keeping y'all updated with what's to come during this midterm election. Election Day is November 6th. Make sure you get out and vote. Victoria, back to you at the desk.
A group of North Korean government-sponsored hackers attempted to steal over $1 billion from multiple global banks. The particularly aggressive attack is just one in a long list since 2014 to come from the group called APT38. 16 organizations in at least 11 countries have been targeted in that time period. With over $100 million successfully stolen, it is believed that these hackers conduct these robberies on behalf of controversial North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. The death toll spiked to more than 1,400 after a massive earthquake and tsunami devastated Indonesia. There is a boiling frustration over the pace of aid as survivors struggle with a lack of resources. CNN's Matt Rivers has more.
Well, the aid operation finally appears to be growing here on Sulawesi Island. Days and days after this earthquake happened, the government response does appear to be increasing. More planes are landing, those planes have aid, and then they're taking people who need to be evacuated out. Ships have arrived bringing aid, they're also going to take people out. More rescue equipment has been brought to this part of Indonesia to help with operations like behind me here, where people could still be trapped, even alive, 5 days on after this earthquake happened. However, there still remains a ton of frustration with the Indonesian government. You talk to people in these camps that have been set up for the people homeless after this event, and they will tell you that they are frustrated by a lack of drinking water, electricity, food, hygiene, healthcare. The list goes on. As for the death toll, it continues to go up, and the reason for that is that they keep finding bodies in places where it's been difficult to look. We saw that firsthand today in a village that was the victim of what's called liquefaction. So during this earthquake, the ground underneath 744 homes that were subsumed by the earth, basically the ground became like liquefied. It had qualities of a liquid, which means everything on top sunk below. So these homes were essentially buried in the mud. We saw that today, and it just becomes all the more worse when you think about people are still buried in there and authorities are still trying to reach them. So yes, the aid is increasing. Rescue operations